Good evening, friends. I think we can get underway. So welcome to this virtual music education conference series addressing music teacher education in the age of COVID-19. Tonight's topic is designing college methods courses to address flexible modality teaching across K12. We are excited to engage in dialogue during this session. If you wish to ask a question or comment, please post using the chat or raise hand features. The icon for chat is located in the bottom of your Zoom window. Similar questions from the chat may be combined and addressed by the discussion leaders, or leaders may call on you to share your comment. If you are called upon, please unmute your microphone before speaking. The microphone icon is located in the bottom left corner of your screen. Our session will unfold as follows. The session leaders will take a few minutes to frame tonight's topic. We will open the floor for questions and discussion, and the session leaders will then offer some concluding thoughts. The moderator will introduce the next session. Actually, this is poor editing. I won't introduce the next session because we are on our last session, but that's okay. So now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's session moderators, Frank Abrahams of Westminster Choir College, Rider University, and Frank Heuser of the Herb Alpert School of Music, UCLA. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. I think I am first here, so let me share my screen. Do we see it? We don't see it. Now we see it, yes? Okay, good. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I have to say that preparing this presentation was daunting for me. Knowing the audience, there are so many of you who are very experienced teaching methods and whose writings have provided foundational readings for the students in many of my methods courses over the years. So this is indeed a little awkward. Nonetheless, and this is not moving. Nonetheless, the pandemic's challenges require us to revisit what we have been doing, what our methods courses are preparing our students to teach their students, and how these courses might look going forward. In March, we all entered crisis teaching and had little or no time to rethink the focus of our courses. Many assumed that we would be back to the way things were and the way things we were used to teaching in the fall. Thus, our methods courses, though delivered remotely, prepared our pre-service teachers to teach skills and concepts in the traditional face-to-face format. Now the challenges are several. Many instructors never took an online course as a student. And though we are teaching courses online, we don't know them from the inside out, only from the outside in. We need to teach our students how to be online learners and then help them to discover how to teach their students to be online learners. Many teachers think that young people possess not only technical savvy, but in many instances, technology expertise. But the reality is that just because a student can play a video game on their computer or tablet or phone does not mean they are experts at online learning. Conversely, we may say the same for their teachers. The approach to converting a lesson designed for face-to-face teaching is rarely successful if one relocates it intact to a computer screen. Online learning is successful when students feel they are part of something. They feel engaged when they have a voice in their own learning. Learning is meaningful when they can foster social connections with each other and their teacher is sensitive to their emotional challenges. Teachers are successful when they focus on process rather than product and shift from teacher-centered lessons to student-centered experiences and provide rich feedback to students throughout the course. Often, methods courses consist of how to master a skill, a particular body of content, or the various procedures and processes one uses to impart an external methodology like Orff or Kodai or Dalcroze or Gordon, whatever. Some method courses focus on music as an absolute, while others see music as a crosswalk to issues of social justice or artistic citizenship. To be successful, methods teachers are well served to infuse strategies to teach students how to learn online into their lesson plans. First, students can master content on their own in their own time. Not all students are on and focused at the same time. They are on their own clocks. Some are morning people, others are active later in the day or evening. Learning is more long-lasting when students deal with content mastery at the time that is best for them. If teachers record presentations for students, they may watch them several times. If students don't get the concepts the first time around, they can see the teacher's presentation multiple times. Online learning empowers students to take personal responsibility for their own learning. This is a positive outcome of online learning because it contributes to constructivist and connectionist goals. Constructivist teaching, you all know, is when the teacher facilitates the student's ability to construct meaning on their own, and connectionist teaching enables students to make connections among and between ideas. These models contribute to student empowerment and student agency. There we go. Online learning provides a fertile ground for individual and group creativity as students work alone or in cyber groups to complete projects. Sometimes these projects are designed by the teacher and sometimes they are designed by the student. Sometimes students and teachers work collaboratively developing and executing projects. Online learning provides opportunities for students to explore and uncover information on their own. Unlike traditional models where the teacher is the sole source of content information, in an online environment, the teacher serves as a coach or facilitator, helping students as needed and providing content knowledge when appropriate. Online learning fosters meaningful collaborations among groups of students. Many students are already used to playing video games on the computer as a member of an online gaming community. That experience easily transfers to online instruction. Online learning provides opportunities for students to set their own learning goals and choose when it comes to assignments. Online learning utilizing breakout rooms enables students to do small group peer teaching to practice and demonstrate mastery of a how-to skill. Online learning is enriched when teachers utilize virtual reality to provide simulations of traditional classroom realities. My suggestion is to embed online learning outcomes into each lesson as appropriate. Some of these outcomes may include to foster learner autonomy and independence, to instill learner responsibility for knowledge acquisition and mastery, to encourage creative and divergent thinking, to seek out and use appropriate technologies to foster content mastery, to empower decision-making, to develop relationship skills that foster connections in a cyber community, to nurture learner independence, to practice strategies for healthy social and emotional well-being, to acquire and honor a sense of personal accomplishment, and to develop management skills. I want to go over several different kinds of online or teaching environments. The first is traditional face-to-face, and that's the course offered at school with regular meetings according to the school schedule. Students are physically present in the classroom for all class meetings. And then the second one is the online distance learning where all students are online. Course may be synchronous or scheduled live meetings with everyone participating via teleconferencing software with the teacher, or asynchronous delivery in which the students do not have to meet at a scheduled time. However, they must complete assignments by specified due dates. The teacher may schedule online meetings with individual students or groups of students at mutually convenient times. Students participate in the course in a location that is suitable for each one of them. The next is hybrid or blended, and that's the combination of traditional and online, where some class meetings are face-to-face in the classroom and others are synchronous and or asynchronous delivered online. All students attend face-to-face and synchronous online meetings together. And typically these hybrid courses have fewer face-to-face sessions than a traditional class. And then I made up this one. This one's called Fusion. This is an Abraham's original. And this is where most students attend the course face-to-face according to the school schedule. However, there are some students who attend at the same time online. They attend from remote locations via teleconferencing software, and I call them Fusion students. So a student who's a Fusion student participates in all the class activities, including but not limited to discussions and group projects. They meet all the course expectations, including attendance, lateness, assignments, and examinations, and they negotiate special accommodations for examinations with the teacher. In some cases, they sign a contract designed by the teacher or the school administrator, and it describes the parameters of their participation. We had several students who were able to have been, over the years, have been able to come face to face, but for whatever reason, they had one more course left and they lived far away, and so they watched the class via Skype each time the class met. And I call those students Fusion students, and those courses Fusion courses. And the last one is virtual. And that's where students use headsets and their teachers enter a virtual space in which they can have a simulated musical or learning experience. Students are able to experience music teaching in a world that simulates an actual classroom embedded in a synthetic environment. So I asked some students how they felt about the end of the semester this spring, and here's what they said. Palmer said, I benefited the most from student presentations of projects provided before, I can't see what's going on here because the pictures, your pictures are covering up, provided by the online meetings. Discussions around the content and the projects themselves evolved in a meaningful and beneficial way, thanks to guidance from the teacher. Students do not need lectures over Zoom, he said. Nicole Page said, recognize and acknowledge that students may be on Zoom all day. I found it daunting to have to watch pre-recorded lectures in full. I appreciated a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous class meetings. In addition, my instructor individually Zoomed with each of us at least twice during the course, and it helped me feel connected to her. But it was very difficult for me to feel I mastered the material in my methods courses while online. Sarah said, the big downside to online was not being physically present in schools. We attempted to teach our peers over Zoom, but it didn't work, and it was very stressful. I know I don't feel confident in my ability to teach guitar because I missed that valuable in-person learning. I would encourage the professors to be open to all types of activities their students may create, rather than saying everyone must create puzzle cards or everyone must teach the recorder in this way. And finally, Taylor said, in choral methods, students sent recordings to their parts for me to grade. This practice was a major negative because a significant focus of my choral methods course was group rehearsal technique. Although I could assess the students' individual performances, I was never able to gauge the choral sound as a whole. Finally, although I thought I was teaching online, I found live teaching opportunities through Zoom to be valuable. I learned so much more from teaching real students. So the task. The task is to teach students to write lesson plans and design learning experiences that have both face-to-face and online options. Rethink assessments to accommodate online learning and online learning outcomes. When doing integrative assessment, consider how the lesson met the online learning objectives. Examine the ways students grew as competent online learners and the ways the teacher grew as competent online instructors. And include options for face-to-face and or various varieties of remote formats. And then I have some suggestions here of things I excerpted from lessons that our students wrote that accommodated both face-to-face and online learning. And here's one. As you are comfortable, share with the class in the classroom or post your comments in an online discussion board. As a class with your teacher or on your own at home, watch the video. What themes emerge? Share your answers in a class discussion or small groups in a chat room or singly on a discussion board. Singly in small groups in the classroom or chat rooms online, make a musical playlist of music by 10 contemporary Black composers or performers that all should know. Make a video explaining why you chose the selections for your playlist and how social justice themes are presented. Post your video on an online discussion board. And finally, using Zoom or other online platforms, invite parents and friends to an open house to share the work completed. So that ends my portion of the presentation. I hope the ideas were helpful, and I hope that if there's anything there that you're able to use, feel free. Thanks so much. I think, Frank, you are next. There we go.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate your focusing on online teaching. I'm taking a little different tactic. I'm looking at how our overall approach to methods has prepared people to function in this crazy environment, even though we didn't specifically prepare them. I've invited Jim Wang, who's just a fabulous middle school string teacher in Santa Monica, to join us, and he works with our student teachers. And Rebecca Batchets, who's graduated a year ago and survived her first year of teaching in elementary school, and she student taught with Jim, so she'll have some interesting perspectives on this. Future music educators spend a considerable portion of their collegiate time in methods courses, which are designed to prepare novices to successfully begin their careers as elementary and secondary teachers. Understandably, undergraduate music education majors are concerned with the how aspects of music instruction and seek instructional techniques that provide formulas and gimmicks that guarantee immediate classroom success. They can get very frustrated when a university professor responds to requests for specific answers to specific problems with the words, "it depends." They don't yet understand how flexible we need to be. It's a mistake to assume that methods courses can provide efficient, clear, and linear pathways towards predictable results in music learning environments. As Alsop and Westerlund suggest, adopting methods, quote, characterized by predictability, uniformity, efficiency, and clarity, end quote, privileges only predetermined specific ends and values. This demand for certainty through method can lead educators to teach the method rather than teach music through creative and generative solutions to instructional problems. We must resist reducing teacher preparation to prescriptive procedures and routines that seem safe but fail to nurture teacher agency, flexibility, and reflective processes. As Parker Palmer insists, the purpose of education is not to impose a prefabricated definition of the world on students, but rather to provide the means of helping a person learn how to define themselves authentically, spontaneously in relation to the world. How is it possible to nurture teacher agency in future music educators when the institutions that prepare them and those in which they will eventually work privilege predictable and predetermined results and thereby fail in their responsibility to nurture dignity and autonomy? How might university programs provide the skills required to teach traditions, develop alternative music education practices, meet unexpected instructional emergencies such as COVID, and help emerging educators acquire the dispositions needed to take risks and challenge professional expectations? At UCLA, we are addressing this dilemma by focusing on our approaches to learning rather than methodologies. This does not mean that we ignore established methods, but instead encourage using methodologies in responsible ways. This is accomplished through an approach we call juxtapositional pedagogy. Our classes incorporate multiple learning activities that do not usually appear in the same course. Presenting learning activities that include contrasting musical styles and/or instructional approaches in the same class creates spaces that opens opportunities to engage in reflection and meaningful discussions about the nature of music and music learning. The foundational course in the curriculum is Learning Approaches in Music Education. In addition to introducing theoretical principles of music education that are usually explored in a foundations course, students engage in formal and informal oral learning, the clarinet and guitar, participate in verbal and written discourse on recordings, perform a song of their own choosing on secondary instruments in a cover band, and complete a formal research paper. These activities place music making at the core of music education program and serve as the basis for contextualized discussions about foundational principles of music education. A detailed description of how students learn clarinet in this class provides a taste of how thought processes are nurtured. The instrument is taught orally and experientially. Initially, we offer minimal explanation regarding technical aspects of playing. Students begin with call and response singing that includes tonal patterns and traditional beginning instrumental repertoire. They then learn to produce a tone and play do through la in B-flat concert on the instrument. Within 45 minutes, they can play 3 simple tunes. Their first assignment is to post a video of those songs on the learning management system before the next class. The requirement of posting the videos function as an essential motivational tool, and they return to the second class having actually practiced and solved basic playing problems. During the second class, the students learn 2 additional fingerings, which allows them to play the tonal area of A-flat concert. They then play previously learned songs in the new tonal area. Their next assignment, however, is not to video songs already learned, but to instead find 2 new songs to practice and record in both tonal areas before the next class. They then return to class and they teach the songs they selected to their colleagues. In this approach, emphasis is not on learning the instrument and simple repertoire. Instead, the clarinet functions as a tool to explore cognitive musical processes in ways that might not be possible in a standard instrumental class. Discussions focus on the cognitive processes underlying instrumental music making, how playing by ear in multiple tonal areas forces decision making during the learning process, which in turn strengthens learning, how placing deliberate difficulties into the learning process results in stronger learning, and how learning an instrument can contribute to cognitive flexibility. It is this type of approach that really helps our students gain flexibility skills so that they can meet challenges which are totally unexpected. Similar questions if they arise during discussions on all the other areas in this course and most of the rest of our courses. This approach supports one of the overarching goals of our program, which is that of engaging students in the process of discovery and creative thinking. These experiences extend music teacher preparation beyond the acquisition of rudimentary performance skills on instruments and beyond the development of a narrow range of specific rehearsal methods needed to replicate traditional school ensembles. Instead, this approach helps future teachers develop flexible pedagogical understandings that can be applied to a wide range of settings and problems, rather than specific methodologies that are applicable only in traditional ensemble settings. Okay. I'm going to turn this over to Jim Wang, and he's going to give you a very wonderful philosophy he's developed to cope with all this. Jim?
Thanks, Frank. And again, Frank, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you want to redirect where I'm going. So hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. Quick context. So I teach at Lincoln Middle School in Santa Monica, California. And I'm fortunate to teach in a school where we have all 3 disciplines thriving in the traditional performative sense. So I myself teach orchestras, orchestral strings, and I have a colleague that teaches band, and I have a colleague that teaches choral music. And so when we went through COVID, it was basically overnight. Overnight, we were told that we couldn't go to campus anymore, and overnight we had to sort of shift our curriculum and our instruction entirely online from in person. And so this conversation with Frank kind of came up as I was reflecting over talking to his students at UCLA and just kind of looking back to what happened at my site this year. And so one of the things that I sort of reflected on is how the three of us, the three music teachers at my site, and we collaborate with each other all the time, how the product that came out of COVID is sort of a direct reflection on our own personal music educational philosophy. And so, for example, creating asynchronous lessons, one of my colleagues who's very good at this was creating all these really interactive, really cool, annotative lessons on music literacy. And I thought, how interesting. I have another colleague who, was really focusing on continuing technique and building pedagogy that way, building basically proficiency with their voice, for the lack of a better word, on who this colleague is. And I found myself sort of leering away from all that, leering away from grading assignments and figuring out what to do next. And one thing that, especially at the middle school setting, was really lacking, in my opinion at least, was a sense of community. I mean, yes, we Zoomed. Yes, the students were in the room seeing each other. But there was something missing. There still is something missing when it comes to just doing classes online that is no longer there when we were creating music together in person. Earlier, Dr. Abrams was talking about constructivism, and one thing that I think is missing is that social constructive piece where we're playing in a rehearsal and we're responding and reacting to one another. And so just thinking about how each of us were delivering content really made me reflect and sit back and think about what is it that I need to personally impart on my student teachers for years to come on their teaching philosophy. And if we kind of strip down things down to the bare bones, what's left? What's left of teaching music? Is it the instrument? Is it technique? Is it literacy, being able to read everything? Or is it about making music? Is it about community, being together? And I would argue that if you ask any of my middle school students, as much as some of them are proficient in their instruments and they love playing, the thing that they miss the most is each other, is part of that community. And as a music teacher, we get that responsibility, or that we're fortunate enough to be able to create that environment for our students. So thinking about community in that context, thinking about how to challenge my student teachers, how to challenge future music teachers to sort of start from that angle. If they didn't have anything else, if they didn't have method book, if they didn't have instruments, if they didn't have access to anything, and they're still teaching music, what is it about music that draws people to that subject matter, to that class? And for me personally, it's really comes down to music and community. And I think as I was reflecting with my colleagues and we were all sort of talking about this, it became quite evident what techniques, what assignments were more well received, were more successful. And I can tell you that going through key signatures or an etude is far less successful than having students sort of create something on their own, at their own accord, and creating virtual chamber music, so to say, virtual orchestras. And so the second thing that I was reflecting on with the UCLA students was sort of technology use. And oftentimes, with me, sort of quick context, I'm currently working on my DMA at USC, University of Southern California. And so I'm always dubbed, because I'm the young one, the millennial, as the guy with the technology. But I'm actually quite anti-technology, because in a sense that I want technology to actually enhance what I'm doing, not replace, so to say, or just to do it for the sake of doing it. And so one thing that technology was actually useful in my own context was Google Classroom, and that became a platform many years ago, way before COVID, for me to actually be able to have a way to authentically assess my students. And so we did video assessments. Students would turn things in online, and I go back to the days where these video assessments used to be via an old camcorder, and during collection day, I would have to collect them on CDs or flash drives and download everything. And so this became evident to me that this is sort of how technology can enhance it, and enhance in the sense that it's feedback, it's assessment. And so as soon as a student turns in a plain exam, so to say, I can immediately give them feedback, and they would immediately get it back, and it would sort of be a back and forth. And so I saw how being able to use technology in this sense made the transition to COVID a lot more smooth, as opposed to other colleagues in my district and around the Southern California area who is learning Google Classroom for the very first time. So again, I don't have answers here. I know Frank has invited me to just share. This is basically my reflection and what's actually going on, on the ground, so to say, with students in the classroom.
Jim, thank you. And as I think I've said to you, your focus on community building in this setting was really impressive to me. I really heard you loud and clearly. Okay, Rebecca, you're on. And Rebecca's just finished her first year teaching. She student taught with Jim and learned a lot from him. And she will just give her impressions of how she was able to cope with this based on her education. Rebecca?
All right, hi everyone. So just a little bit of a background on me. I teach grades transitional kindergarten through 5th grade, general music, and band and strings. And today I just wanted to provide my perspective as a first-year teacher being thrust into an online teaching environment in my first year, and maybe how those experiences can inform the broader view of college methods courses moving forward. A little bit about my district. When the lockdown was first announced, we had over 400 students just at my school site that didn't have devices or Wi-Fi, and we were fully unprepared as a district to provide those devices to students. So it was about 3 weeks to a month before I could even start teaching online because it took so long to get devices into the hands of students. And when that time did come as a music teacher, I was recording 5 to 10 minute lessons per week for each grade. And at first, I was extremely discouraged because I had a large lack of response from students. I would try to create challenges where I could see what grade had the most students that sent videos back of them singing a song or engaging with the music lesson in some way. And out of 550 students at my school, I would say maybe I would get about 2 to 3 responses per week. And so I took a step back and really assessed the situation as to why I was losing this connection with students and having such a low response online. And my first goal after that moment of reflection was to establish a connection with my students that I felt I was missing in this virtual world. So the first assignment that I asked the students to do was through Flipgrid, where they could send back videos very easily. And I just simply asked them to send back a video explaining what they were doing during quarantine. And of course, immediately I'm rushed with all of these videos of kids holding up their cat or talking about what breakfast they had that morning. And it's elementary school, so they're going really in depth with the videos that they've been watching in YouTube and all of that. And I was able to find this connection with students even to an extra layer that I wasn't able to find in the classroom. And once that foundation was laid, I really was able to pull more students in and connect with them, and they were able to engage more in music content. So moving into this new way of teaching in my first year, I really relied on the foundation that was set during my student teaching in college. And during student teaching, I would often have to make videos of myself and reflect on what went well, what didn't go well, and how I could change things in the future. And I felt that this really helped me to be more adaptive and reflective in my teaching. And it's actually something that I continued to do into my first year. And the reflection and flexibility that this fostered through the process of videotaping and watching myself, I feel really allowed me to transition mindfully into online learning. And moving forward, teachers are going to have to instruct in many different scenarios, especially teachers that are going right into their jobs next year and moving forward. And we can't predict what the classroom or learning community is going to look like in a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road. And for me, I think that it's important within college courses that the proper mindset to conquer these changes is addressed. So methods courses should place teachers in scenarios where they must reflect on how effective their teaching styles are, and they should encourage teachers to have a growth mindset and be flexible when situations change and understand that there's not one way to fix a problem. So they need to find, there might be 3 or 4 solutions that they find before they actually can fix the problem. And I also believe that courses should encourage teachers to embrace change and to adapt and reflect, because those teachers are the teachers that are really going to be the forefront of education when our education systems do change inevitably. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. It's just, when she told me how she adapted to this, I was blown away, because so many of the older teachers out there were just griping. And she was just so positive and looked at this as a challenge rather than something negative. So now we have people's opportunities to jump in and talk and ask questions and make comments. Should we just return this to Michelle to moderate? I'm going to make you wake up, Michelle.
I got it. I can start with a question. First of all, thank you all for the different thoughts that you have presented, and Frank, your opening kind of summation of the parameters and challenges that we face. One of the, maybe it fits under your fusion heading, but one of the things we're talking about on my campus right now is the idea that we will have a professor in a room with a small number of students while another group of students is online at the same time. And there may be another group that is asynchronous. And I'm becoming very concerned about monitoring 3 different learning environments, 2 simultaneously and 1 asynchronously. And then the bonus challenge of helping my students figure out how to do that across K12 settings. So I don't know what experience anybody else might have with managing sort of 2 classroom environments at the same time, if we just set aside asynchronous even for a second. But how do you manage the 6 people in your room and the 15 that are on Zoom and ensure the quality of experience of both? That's my current ponder.
I don't know what the answer is, actually. We're all facing that, and it's kind of an extension of differentiated instruction, isn't it? I mean, we're kind of not differentiating content, but we're differentiating delivery, and I think that one of the challenges is we had a good number of students that didn't feel the online was as serious as the face-to-face instruction. And we also had faculty who would forget about their online class. It's like, oops, my online class, because somebody said, when am I getting feedback from my assignment? And it's like, oops, I forgot my online class. And I think that's going to be a real challenge, but I have a feeling that we're all going to get very adept at it in the fall. When we first started in March, I think the assumption was by fall, everything would be back to normal. And I clearly everything is not going to be back to normal, but I'm not sure it ever will be. And I think that a lot of us are finding that some of the online things we're doing are more successful than the face-to-face things that we were doing. Clearly we can't do the drum circle online, but there are things that we can do that we could not do. And we're finding in some instances, students are more comfortable online, where they don't have to answer in the very instant of the moment, and they can answer in the comfort of their own space. We have voice teachers, for example, that told me that they found that their students taking the remote lessons were much more focused. And we don't know whether that was because they were in their own home, whether that's because they were by themselves and just with the I don't know. But I think, Michelle, what you're saying is just is right on the money. I think we're all going to be faced with all different kinds of combinations of students. We have, we're all going to have students that are not going to want to come to campus because either the health issues, or they live very far away and they don't want to move to the location of the college only, a month later or 2 months later to be sent home again. So I think it's going to be a real challenge. And as I said earlier, we don't know how we're going to sanitize keyboard labs and how we're going to sanitize between lessons. I mean, we don't have a staff that's going to go in there with to be able to sanitize classrooms and whatnot that have those kinds of hands-on things. And so many things we do in music education methods have to do with equipment that we're all touching. So it's going to be a a real challenge. And I have the questions, I don't have the answers. I apologize, but I just don't have the answers.
I think we all just have the questions.
Yeah.
I was struck this week by thinking about how I'm going to teach my teaching composition K12 course. And I was just imagining breaking off into all these little groups and transitioning this online, and it all seemed so simple. And then I remembered that we would not have access to the instrument room where we go and grab everything we need to do the project. Like, nobody will have those tools. I was like, and now back to square one. But it's just amazing kind of the things that we have taken for granted, and there are so many great new challenges, but it's easy to get caught in assumption. Alexander Coops put a question up here for Jim about could you share something that helped make community within your orchestra, something you thought was successful? Could you answer that?
I could probably share more failures than successes at this point, to be honest. But I would say, you know, again, kind of stripping away everything, instruments and music and whatnot, it was just really what my students really needed was just a safe space online, just to be present and just to sort of see each other. And so instead of trying to cram the limited time that, you know, my school and its calendar was giving me for each class, I just took advantage of, you know, our scheduled elective time just to sort of host a Zoom room and sort of let my students just kind of be present and be there. And toward the end, one of the things that we've been working on is the virtual orchestra. You know, we're all inspired by Eric Whitaker's original, of course. And so it basically became like an editing session where I was live streaming my screen as I was putting everything together, and they were just there watching and sort of chatting in the chat room with each other. So just kind of providing that space as the adult, because, you know, our students don't really necessarily do that on their own. I hope that answers part of your question, Xander.
I don't know if everybody saw in the chat, but Nathan just kind of outlined an experiment in the scenario that I was asking about, and it doesn't look super promising. So I think as we're all thinking about these things, we need to make sure that we're sharing with our friends in some way through a few Wednesday night wine hours together or whatever, and just brainstorm and share, because we're all facing challenges that we don't know the answer to, and the more brains, the better. Kathy, does anybody else have questions or thoughts that they want to speak out loud?
Yeah, just a thought. One of the things I discovered is that the students were so anxious to meet together that they looked forward to every online session. And I'm just wondering if you can create some of that in combined classes. I mean, I don't know, but it took me by surprise that after about 3 weeks, they were so lonely that the beginning of class was an important time for them. And, you know, what Rebecca said about the kids just wanting to share tells us something important. And if we create that kind of space, we may get them to want to come. And that wasn't how I usually started classes. So it really was an evolution in my working with kids.
I think one of the things that I found, Frank, was that my students who are typical 18 to 21s very much wanted synchronous class meetings. They didn't necessarily, however, want the full 60 or 75-minute class, but they wanted at least a half hour, and they wanted someone to check in and ask them how they were, to run over whatever assignment they were turning in, to answer some questions, and to set up the next thing, and then set them free to do their work. But that opening connection point seems really critical. Does anyone else have strategies or thoughts about creating that opening connection or connections with students in that online environment, things that they found worked well?
Michelle, there are a number of colleagues, in fact, I'm looking at two of them right now, that have done online coffee hours or happy hours or something later in the day or around dinner time or something that is independent of the course time, but it was just clearly very social, and it enabled people to just kind of talk. I had lunch the other day with 12 students online, and I think that you're right, they just want to talk. One of our biggest concerns at my school is that people come to our school for choir, and we're not sure we're going to be able to do that, because there's the research is all over the place about whether it's safe, whether it's not safe, and whether we have space to socially distance 100 students in a choir. And the other side of that is that a lot of the gigs are being canceled. So I think one of the things that our students loved about the ensembles was that community feeling. And so to do those, so we have one ensemble conductor at the school that met with the kids socially one night a week as well, the choir, on Zoom, and that seemed to be very, very successful. With college students, you were certainly able to do that. I don't know whether your fifth grade would come to a coffee hour at your house, but on Zoom. But with college students, we certainly can do it, and they're very, very appreciative of it.
Has anyone given thought to student-teacher placement and observation in the online world? What challenges or opportunities is that presenting that you had not anticipated prior to this?
Maybe I could put my colleague Jason on the spot and have him talk a little bit about his experience with the student teachers and with observing them. I apologize, Jason, for putting you on the spot, but I actually don't apologize.
That's fine. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last time, I'm sure. Hi, everybody. I'm one of Frank's colleagues at Westminster. I think what comes to mind first is some of the benefits of doing student teaching online. Number one, classroom management just was not an issue. And so then I started to realize just how much time our student teachers spend trying to figure out how to manage the classroom, and how that takes away from them figuring out the pedagogy of teaching the music. And with that management aspect gone, I just saw really rapid development in their pedagogy, which was really surprising and heartening. And has also made me think, well, maybe our first practicum experience by default just needs to be online, so that they don't have to deal with the management piece, and we layer that in later on. I think the other positive I saw was just how much individual data they were collecting from each of their students. I teach choral methods, so you look at the choir and you listen to the choir and they sound pretty good, and you assume that everybody knows their stuff and is doing what they should be doing. That's very different than receiving a video every week of students singing for you, giving them feedback specifically, giving students choice on what they want to sing, as opposed to in choir where we kind of pick for them as the default. So the individual assessment piece I thought was really great, and just a way to focus on pedagogy. I was very surprised.
Thank you, Jason. So some people are putting other thoughts up in the chat about ways to approach. I think we're probably all nervous about what schools will be doing and whether they will be accepting student teachers. I know at my institution, our entire College of Ed has sent out notes to school systems explaining the importance of student teaching. What other things are people encountering on that front?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real issue. A number of the schools around us here are debating how they might actually reduce class sizes. So, and in that reduction of class sizes, the piece of the student teacher might take the short stick out of that process, right? And in a space that is already filled with preoccupations. They are trying to figure out how classes that are usually with 24 to 28 students will be reduced from 15 to 18. And the addition of a student teacher in the room is just not a consideration right now. So it's certainly challenging for us. And
Patrick, are they talking about putting 15 to 18 physically in a room?
yeah, that's one of the plans right now here. And from the governor's office and Minister of Education down is that the plans are for a reduction of physical presence. They want to get back in September and to have students in the classes. They might create some kind of a rotation with students, and that rotation will be connected to the reduction of physical presence, but they want the physical presence. Just today, I think that the National Association for Pediatricians in US have released a statement talking about, the importance of physical presence back in schools. And I think that that's the direction they're going. But, with that direction, then the reduction of presence of student teachers is almost a given. And that has been communicated to our school, Faculty of Education here at the School of Education. And so the plans right now is that students in the fall semester will not be going into schools.
That's interesting. It's interesting, the American Pediatric Association opens with, it's best to get people back to school, ... right? They're still hedging their bets as well. Interesting, Jan Smith posted here a ways back that her university is letting go a lot of their adjuncts and putting more students into their methods courses. So where many of us probably try to hold our methods courses at 15 or 20 and marvel at the challenge of getting them floor time and out into schools, Jan has her hand raised and she's looking at a class of probably 38. Jan, what were you going to say?
Yes, it's part of being a public university in New York, and they're looking at tremendous budget cuts, and really the only way they can cut the faculty budget is to cut the adjuncts, and so there's all hell is breaking loose. But among their solutions is that we will have, they said initially that there would be no upward limit on classes. And the other thing that I was just going to throw into the conversation is that because of economics and because of what it costs us to place student teachers and have someone supervise them, we have done spring-only student teaching for a long time. That might be a solution for some people to look at. That does complicate things when people are trying to graduate in 4 years. And Queens also, in addition to having these large class sizes, does have students who have been guaranteed that their classes will be available and that they can complete the program in 4 years. And so when you put all of that together, that's why I might wind up with 38 folks in this class. I'm a little worried about teaching a class that size just because I don't know that I can get to the project work that I want them to do quickly enough to grade that many assignments. And so I'm really rethinking what it is I'm going to ask them to do in terms of things that they submit to me, because if the class is that size, it can take a very long time to grade it. I don't think that's going to be a long-term solution, but that's what they're trying right now.
Wow, thank you, Jan. I think we're all facing that same challenge of trying to figure out what is the most important component of our methods course. There are so many important things to cover. There are so many experiences that we want students to have, and yet somehow in this environment, there needs to be some distillation, and it's a very perplexing challenge. I hope that it actually advances our profession in the long run, but in the immediate point, it's somewhat daunting. Kate Evans, you had posted something about meeting with sort of all of the stakeholders in student teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing?
Sure. Our teachers, most of them freaked out, obviously, because they weren't sure what they were doing and they had already had interns placed with them. So they were looking for some support. So we just offered with their music supervisor for the county to start a weekly group to talk for an hour, and if you want to come get ideas, what are you doing with your interns, what are ways you're supplementing instruction for things that can't be done in the traditional way. So we gave ideas. A lot of the time we just listened and let the teachers share ideas, and I think they felt less isolated by having that group. And so that helped us also to create an extra online component class for our interns with supplemental things like listening to recordings and giving feedback as if you were an adjudicator or things like that to help them supplement. But the teachers who did that last semester are the ones who are accepting our interns for the fall again because they feel comfortable, know they have a support group. So we're hoping that that will encourage more teachers to say yes if they know that's available.
Thank you, Kate. I think it's really, it's an exciting opportunity that we have to partner with K-12 teachers in ways that maybe we have not in the past. Because of the Google Classroom and the Zoom breakout rooms and places where we can have our pre-service teachers step into a small group room with 5 or 6 students and provide some support there that maybe takes the 80-piece band and breaks it into smaller groups for some more pointed instruction. But it also raises the issue of how we observe them in all of those places at the same time. There comes some questions of having more professional, more experienced eyes in the room, if you will, and then getting feedback to all of them. So does anyone have experience with sort of the juggle? Does anybody have pointers on that kind of juggling of lots of humans engaged at once?
I think for me, I found that I've had to give up some of my control where I'm the one giving feedback a lot of the time and let the students give more feedback to each other. And they normally do that anyway, but making a point to have them do that more often has been really good for them. They're getting better at giving feedback, which they need to do as teachers. And I can step in and see what they're doing and add my opinion, but I don't have to be the one doing it all the time. Sometimes I give them more feedback, but letting them jump in has been both a time saver and good for them.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Kathy?
This Kate's example would be a perfect learning objective, right? Like this global learning objective. If we can engage with the other in that way, wham, 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 what does that look like from undergraduate on, from pre-K on, to work backwards from exactly what Kate just articulated?
Kate, you have solved everything. Good job.
Now, if I could find a way to teach and have someone watch my 3-year-old at the same time, that's not going so well.
Kate, you have to let something go, honey.
Maybe I'll just let my kid go wander for a while. No, just kidding.
Your kid's climbing the wall. Be careful, baby. I was thinking to what Jason was saying about working on pedagogy without having the management component thrown in. It'll be very interesting to see beginning teachers who develop strong pedagogy skills online and then watch them as they transfer into the classroom and have to add management to it. You know, maybe they'll tell us something about a better way to start student teachers. I mean, I've been thinking about that since you spoke, Jason. Thank you.
I think that for my my student teachers, which will be spring student teachers, the thing that they are scared about is management. They're not scared about content. They're not scared about, you know, tripping on the podium and in a rehearsal and not hearing something just right. They're terrified of classroom management. And we all know that there are as many strategies as the day is long that you can share with them, but they don't mean a thing until you're actually in the room. So this is an interesting experience and an experiment in our training of teachers when we have a significant challenge that there isn't necessarily a great way to address. Were there other comments? I'm trying to look at participants, chats, and faces simultaneously.
Janet Welby has her hand up, or did have her hand up.
Janet, are you there?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that this online environment has forced me to really focus on peer-to-peer learning. I'm teaching a course this summer, and it's graduate students, but they're not comfortable talking in the big group. But at the minute I put them into breakout rooms, they are fabulous at what they come up with, how they learn from each other. And it's always been a powerful thing, but it's a real necessity now. And I'm finding myself, I used to say to students, turn and talk, but I'm finding myself saying, okay, breakout rooms. And I have to get used to the lag involved in doing turn and talk. But it's really emphasizing the power of peer-to-peer learning. So it's been great.
And also I want to piggyback about the probably like possible lack of classroom management experience in this online type of student teaching. And that's very true, but I really want to kind of emphasize to my student teachers to establish a good relationship with the cooperating teachers and your students as much as possible, because establishing a relationship first probably like allow them to work with one-to-one relationship, and we can expand our limit 1 to 2, 1 to 4 in the small group setting. So it's not gonna like similar to 1 to 20, the classroom, the teacher and student ratio setting, but still students are learning how to work with just human, how like students are responding. So from 1 to 4, by the increasing the number of the students that are working as a small group, they can gain the similar, nearly authentic type of how to work with human relationships. And that's basically the first step for the classroom management. And another important thing is that sometimes our student teachers are super shy. Sometimes they forget to raise their voice. And sometimes cooperating teachers are forgetting about like, oh, whether I have a student teacher. So I talk to my student teachers, you should voice yourself and just make yourself visualize to the students and cooperating teachers and ask them, hey, what can I do for you? And find the best, the most possible ways for you to do something to engage in, to participate in. So some student teachers of the past semester, they created kind of like online talent show, the school-wide. And the music teacher allowed them to be a coach for each student to develop their talent. That's how they can engage in the like small group teaching, and they can be a judge at the end of the show. So that's how still it's not authentic, but still part of the community in that school. So I think that's one of the like comments for the student teachers, actively make the most possible opportunities to be engaged in.
Thank you. I love that model of the one-on-one relationship and now one-on-two, one-on-three, and just kind of grow the crowd that they get to work with, so that it's a fluid transition instead of you have arrived in the very deep end of the pool. Thank you for that. Are there other comments? Gina, where'd you go?
I'm here. I'm still here.
Did you want to talk about your connections between classmates in the breakout rooms a little bit?
Yeah, my grad students, and I got a lot of feedback at the end of the semester. The one thing they really, really appreciated was that they were really skeptical when we all switched to online. And I tried to run my class online, not very different from the way I did it face to face. So that we would start off with a discussion. I would check in on everybody, how everybody's doing. And then I always had some kind of creative activity that they could do and put them into breakout rooms. And we use technology like Soundtrap and things like that for them to create music together and then come back and share. And one of the things they really appreciated was that at the end of the day, the class didn't feel that much different. And it was more of a social emotional thing than what they actually learned, but just that sense that they were together, that there was some kind of bond that was being developed, I think was really, really important for them.
Thank you, Gina. Valerie, were you going to comment?
Yeah, I was kind of going to say the same thing. Jan, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about graduate courses. Gina, that's what you just talked about. It was the same for me. I had my graduate class, I had students that were in very difficult situations and it was a hybrid course. So I already had stuff online and in class, but what worked really well was the small groups. And I just moved around. They decided how they were going to connect and I moved in and out and they invited me in. And that was really, I had some students who had these incredible situations and I was just trying to kind of keep them on an even keel and they really, really appreciated that. So that human connection and just beyond just the content, just making sure everybody was okay. And I met with everybody personally too in that class. I was able to, it was a small seminar class. So that was really helpful and that worked really well. My undergraduate class, the kids they did composition online and put everything together too, and that worked quite well. So I think the small group thing really works around and then you can go in and out. Michelle, I wanted to respond to what you said too. I mean, I did teach a class that I was forced to teach. It was not my idea. We call it here modalities. Like people are away and they're in. It's, you know, we say some things that's the best of both worlds. Well, it's the worst of both worlds. So you can't be in the moment. I'm seeing Jan shaking her head. It's, you know, I've done hybrid, I've done online, but doing them both at the same time, you can't be in the moment with the people that are there. And it's like, I'm not saying you can't do this. It takes a lot of preparation, but it's really difficult to be in the moment with people and then to be distance with people. Very difficult. And I had students who would like close their cameras off and go away basically. And I said, no. You need to be with us here, you know, stuff like that. So I think it's really a challenge. And I try to do my best with these kinds of things, but it's a real challenge, like you said, to have, if you're at 2 modalities and you're going to 3, I think there has to be a huge question asked in terms of pedagogy. What are we doing here? You know, it's going to be difficult. So anyway, just saying that I'm doing my methods course. We got it through. I'm allowed to go on campus, but everything could, you know, go off the charts if we have a second wave here. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Valerie. I spoke with a colleague the other day who regularly teaches a distance course where we have 3 campuses within our university. So he's on one with a small group of students and another small group of students is sitting on another campus in a room. And he just outlined, even in that, all of the same problems that Nathan outlined about the people in the room turning to talk to each other, can't be heard by the other room. Basically, if you put 10 people in a room, they've all got to open Zoom anyway, or they can't hear the other 10. So then why are we all risking our lives being in a room, right? So there are many pedagogical challenges to address here.
Can I just add something? Sorry, I just thought of this. We're doing a seminar in music education for all our graduate students, and I'm trying to create what we call, and I'm thinking in French, sorry. So auto formation. So it's like self-education. So these kind of modules that will stay after, okay? So we're using this as a reason to set up stuff, and we have a big toolbox and all this stuff that we've been putting together since we locked down. And we're actually getting some monies from the government actually for these students to work on these things. So hopefully those things will stay. So we'll be able to use them if we need them. We can still bring people in, but we have them kind of set up so they will rotate around for students. So it's a way of, you know, having an excuse to set up stuff and create stuff online that will stay there later also. So anyway, just throw that up.
Thank you, Valerie. Frank, would you like to offer some concluding comments as we kind of wind down here this evening?
You know, with me, when I first started this, I had never taught online before, about 12 weeks ago. And the first week, I felt like I was a beginning teacher in a classroom. I It was just, it freaked me out. But I had to adopt a stance of, this is a challenge for me to learn something from. And when I began to think that way, it changed things. And I'm looking forward to figuring these things out and working with colleagues like everyone here to try and help me with that. So that's it. I don't have answers to things, but I just want to learn more. And this is a learning opportunity. And it surprises me that I think that way. But former student Rebecca helped me think that way. Okay. Frank?
I first of all, thank you all for not being frank and doing all those frank things tonight. That's very much appreciated. But several years ago, I taught 2 undergraduate sophomore classes, the same course. One was live and one was totally online. And I found that the students in the section that was totally online did better. And I tried to figure out why they did better. And the conclusions at the time were that they were able to manage the content on their own time when it was their best time, not necessarily at 10:20 on Tuesday and Thursday morning. That they felt more comfortable and more connected to me, to send me questions, to request meetings, to request to talk. They were texting me much more frequently than the live students, and they appreciated the fact that they felt I was available to them when they needed me, and not 3 days later when I had an office hour. And it was just very, very interesting. Now I'm hearing from students, well, I don't learn well online, and that's not my learning style, and that's not really the way so things have kind of changed and evolved a little bit. But I always enjoyed my online teaching, and I really felt that I got to know the students sometimes a lot better one-on-one than I did in a larger group. And I also appreciated the fact that everybody had to participate in the discussion. And I think that I got better answers because they were able to think when they wanted to think, and they could word process their answer. And so those experiences were very good. Before we sign off, though, I have to tell you how much I have appreciated these sessions in connecting with so many people that I have a long history with, and that I'm making new friends with, and whose things I've read and never met. And I think we're having the same pangs that our students are. And I very much appreciate Michelle and Jan putting this together so that we could all come together several times over this the last couple weeks or so, and just kind of talk. And I can't thank you enough for having thought to put this together for us. And I think it was valuable for certainly me, and I would imagine for most everybody else. So thank you very, very, very much.